Remember that Vince Vaughn movie, Delivery Man, where his character donated sperm almost like 700 times and he ended up having over 500 resulting children? Crazy premise, right? Well, in the movie, 142 of the resulting children filed a class action lawsuit to force the fertility clinic to reveal the identity of the alias that Vince Vaughn used. I probably should have said spoiler alert now that I think about it. Yeah. Well, I thought the movie was hilarious, but it left a lot of people wondering, is sperm donation confidential? Well, stick around and we'll get into it. What's up? I'm Corlandos Scott, a third-party reproduction attorney in Los Angeles, and that simply means that I have really dedicated my practice to helping people grow their families through assisted reproductive technologies like sperm donation. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the types of sperm donation. I'm also going to cover known versus unknown sperm donation, and I'll highlight the differences between confidentiality and anonymity. And by the way, we'll also look at a new important California law that affects sperm donor confidentiality. So you'll want to stick around to the end. Let's go. We'll start by talking about the types of sperm donation. I put the types of sperm donation into two different categories, known versus anonymous. And sometimes they're referred to by different names, but sperm donations can typically be lumped into those two categories. You may hear known donations referred to as directed donations or open donations. And you may also hear anonymous donations referred to as unknown donations or closed donations. But the distinction between the two main types of sperm donation really boils down to whether the donor is known to the recipient or whether the donor and the recipient are anonymous to each other. Now, in a known or open donation arrangement, the parties know each other. More often than not, known donations are arrangements between family members. Donation from a father or a brother or a cousin, or donations from even a close friend. But to say that a donor and recipient in a known donation actually know each other is a bit of a misnomer. Now, the FDA defines a directed donor like this. It says, a directed reproductive donor is a reproductive donor who knows and is known by the recipient before the donation. But the FDA does not give any direction on what it means to be known. It just says they are known. Does known mean that you have to meet in person? Does it mean you met over the phone? Does it mean that you have revealed your legal name to the other individual? What really does known mean in the context of a directed sperm donor? Well, typically clinics and parties take known to mean that the recipient and the donor need to meet, either in person or via phone or video, and exchange identifying information also. However, trust me, I've seen cases where video meetings occurred, but no identifying information was exchanged, and vice versa. So when doing a directed sperm donor arrangement and you don't have an attorney, consult with your fertility clinic or sperm bank on their best practices around a donor known to the recipient. Now, the other type of sperm donation is an anonymous donation. An anonymous donation is when the donor and recipient are not known to each other, and there's no contact between the two parties. Donors in this type of arrangement, they typically donate their sperm to a sperm bank in order to just store the sperm for potential use in the future. Now, it's also possible to be matched by a matching agency and still remain anonymous, but typically for sperm donors, this is less common. Now, an interesting thing about gamete donation is that what starts as an anonymous donation may be required to be converted into a known or directed donation. How can that happen? Well, in order to get there, we have to look at the process that a potential sperm donor must go through before they can qualify to donate sperm. Now, it makes sense that in order to donate sperm, a man must be healthy enough to do so, right? So donors are required to be screened for risk factors that may increase the chances of transmitting a communicable disease. So this donor screening typically consists of reviewing the donor's relevant medical records for any kind of risk factors that can come up, any kind of communicable diseases that come up in their history, or anything like that. And part of this process includes a medical history interview. And that determines the medical history and relevant social behavior, and they even get into some family history there. But we don't leave off a physical examination. They have to have a physical examination, and in this part of the process, they also need to disclose any treatments that they are undergoing or have undergone that are related to medical conditions that may suggest that the donor is at increased risk for a communicable disease. Now, once the donor passes this step, he's one step closer to being a donor, but the testing isn't over. Now the donor sample must also be tested for infectious diseases, and that includes HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, syphilis, chlamydia, gonorrhea, even other things. So what happens if any of the infectious disease tests come back positive? Well, here's where things get interesting. A positive test means that the potential donor is declared to be ineligible, but that can be misleading because it doesn't necessarily mean that the ineligible donor can't donate. So check this out. Sperm from a directed donor who has been determined to be ineligible, remember, meaning he tested positive for some kind of relevant communicable disease, the sample from these donors are not prohibited from use. Wait, we're not going to prohibit the use of a donor with a communicable disease? How is that? Well, it's all about disclosures. And this takes us back to my mentioning that sometimes what starts out as an anonymous donation can be forced to become a known or directed donation. Sometimes a recipient will want to proceed with a donor even though he has been declared ineligible due to testing positive for a communicable disease. And you might ask, Corlandos, why on earth would a recipient do that? Why would you want to get the sperm of someone who has a communicable disease? Well, here's an example. There could be a donor who tests positive for HIV, and that fact will render him as an ineligible donor. However, there is a medical technique known as sperm washing, where sperm is removed and separated from the HIV-infected semen, and then that separated non-HIV infected sperm is used in the IVF process to create a healthy, non-HIV infected embryo. So the embryo doesn't have HIV because the sperm used to create it didn't have HIV because that sperm was separated from the semen that contained HIV. Sperm washing has had an excellent record. In fact, in 2016, the journal Fertility and Sterility found 0 transmissions of HIV from 11,585 sperm washing procedures. So the recipient of the ineligible donor may say, I still want to work with this donor because I can do a sperm washing procedure. Well, the recipient is allowed to do just that. But in order to proceed with the ineligible donor, the FDA says the donation can no longer be anonymous. At this point, the donation must become a directed donation. And there are no exceptions that allow for the use of sperm from an ineligible anonymous donor. If you want to work with an ineligible donor, that donor has to become a known donor. And the reason that this is even allowable is because when you choose this approach, there has to be very clear disclosures made to the recipient and the donor, and the sperm sample must be properly labeled with biohazard labels and warnings to indicate whatever the increased risk of relevant communicable disease is. And the physician is going to carefully notate this throughout the entire process. And so that's how an anonymous donation can turn into a known donation. Now, up to this point, I've been discussing the nuances of known sperm donation versus anonymous sperm donation. But the question we posed at the beginning of the video was not about anonymity, it was about confidentiality. And it may seem like it's just semantics, but there's a difference between the two. But hey, before I dive into the difference between confidentiality and anonymity, I want to take a second to say thank you. Thank you so much for rocking with me in this channel. Sometimes it can feel like you're speaking into a vacuum when it's just you and the camera, but I'm always encouraged when I see a comment or meet people who tell me that they enjoyed a video. So thank you so much for watching. And if you're enjoying the video, please just hit the like button. And if you're enjoying the channel, go ahead and subscribe. If I could click a like button for you on the other side of the screen, please believe that I will be clicking away. Okay, now to anonymity and confidentiality. Now, it was a bit of a winding road, I admit, but I had to cover anonymity to get to confidentiality. Because if a donation is anonymous, then it's likely that your identity as a donor is going to remain confidential. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So let's look at the difference between the two. Anonymity is when the identity of each individual in the process is unknown to the other individual. In essence, I'm dealing with somebody, but I couldn't tell you who that someone is because I haven't been given their name or any identifying information about them. Now, in a confidential arrangement, the parties can be either known to each other or unknown to each other. But confidentiality refers to a situation where the parties themselves are going to take steps to protect the identity of the other party, if they know the identity. But at the very least, they're going to take steps to protect the terms of the donation arrangement from being discovered by others. So even if a donation was anonymous, it could still be confidential because the terms of the arrangement should be protected from other individuals. Same way, if the donation was known, there would be the need to keep the terms of the arrangement as well as the identity of the other party confidential. So there's a slight difference between anonymity and confidentiality. Now, let's finish by discussing a new legal wrinkle in California. I call it a wrinkle because it creates one more step for donors who want to protect their privacy and anonymity, but it was enacted in order to give donor-born children the best chance at obtaining information about their donors. And I can certainly respect and appreciate that. But here's the deal. California has recently added a law to the Health and Safety Code that essentially gives any child born via donation the right to contact the clinic when the child turns 18 years old and request the information of their sperm donor. Now, if a donor wishes to remain anonymous and for the clinic to keep his identity confidential, he must sign a declaration attested by a notary or witnessed by some other individual that states that the donor does not agree to disclose his identity to the child. Otherwise, when the child turns 18 years of age, the sperm bank shall provide the child with identifying information of the donor if the child requests it. So if you're thinking about donating sperm and you want it to be kept confidential by the sperm bank, please be sure to get the declaration from the sperm bank and complete it and sign it in front of a witness. Otherwise, you might just end up like Vince Vaughn's character in Delivery Man. Now, if you need some help sorting through the sperm donation process, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you. You can click the link in the description below and you'll be taken to chatwithcorlandos.com. And from there, you can start a chat with me. I can't wait to chat with you.